In order to understand the full story and struggle of the indigenous peoples of India and Mexico, we must first explore the roots of colonialism and how it has deeply affected the culture and daily lives of previously colonized countries even today. When most people hear the word colonialism, they think of Christopher Columbus sailing across the Atlantic to discover America, but in reality, the concept of colonialism has been around for thousands of years. Colonialism begins with a powerful leader in search of territory and riches to enhance their power and to demonstrate their status as a worldwide empire. There was Alexander the Great, who expanded his empire to spread through all of the Middle East, building cities and naming them after himself. And Genghis Khan, who began his conquest in what is now Russia and expanded his ruthless campaign of Asian dominance into Middle and parts of Lower Asia. As time progressed into the late 15th century, the empirical desire of world domination sounded a bit too aggressive and selfish to be accepted by the general population, so these clever leaders disguised it by giving other reasons as to their strong presence in these foreign lands. Mexican social scientist Pablo González Casanova explains how the term colony has changed throughout the past centuries, as originally being understood as a territory occupied by immigrants of mother country, but then colony was misunderstood as a territory in which the immigrants dominated the indigenous people. Most empires proclaimed it was to spread religion or to establish port cities as reasoning to conquer foreign territories. But the most common was the claim that it was a purely humanitarian desire to help the indigenous populations. Though we will primarily be discussing the effects of this empirical strategy used by the British during their occupation of India and the Spanish colonization of Mexico, these same colonial tactics were used all over the world and are not isolated to these two regions. The Spanish crown used the money and the influence of the Catholic Church to fund their expeditions to Mexico, claiming that they were spreading the word of God, which few did. The Spanish government implemented the encomienda system, which designated property and Indian labor rights to Spanish settlers, and in return, the encomendero would provide protection and instruction of Christianity. As you can see in this diagram of what a colonial town in New Spain would have looked like, there's a large monastery built in the center of the town, representing the power of religion. Surrounding the church, we see vast farmland where the natives were used for hard labor with little concern over the teachings of Christianity. This system presented a new dynamic to the colony, the colonizers versus the colonized, and in most cases you were one of either. The white Spaniards who stayed in Mexico after the revolution against Spain continued their positions of power and were a majority in the new Mexican government. Due to the extremely long period of colonization and oppression of the indigenous Mexicans, some white Spaniards felt a sense of entitlement and superiority, and a caste system developed. Similarly, in India, the British government had taken control and established itself as the dominating force. The coastal towns of India were originally just used by the East India Trading Company as ports to stop and resupply or trade for silk and other spices. The British Crown quickly realized the immense wealth and production goods that can come out of India and were eager to partake in their profits. By the mid-1600s, the British had built a very strong presence and influence in India. Like in Mexico, the British clergy and military personnel stationed in India had the majority of control over the Indian population, which vastly outnumbered them. The fact of the matter was that the British had infiltrated the Indian caste system and placed themselves at the pinnacle. They took advantage of the peaceful and respectful nature of the Indian culture for their own benefit and continued to do so into the late 19th and early 20th century. The development and advancement of the Mexican and Indian culture has been modeled by colonialism, but built by the people. Yes, the colonizing powers had dominance and authority, but profits do not arise strictly from dominance and authority, but from blood, sweat, and tears, most of which came from the indigenous people of Mexico and India. In this photograph, we see three Mexican men in the early 20th century on a banana and coffee farm in the middle of the day. The two on the right are in ragged clothing, which gives us a sense that they merely work on the farm and do not own it. The man on the right seems to be much better dressed, suggesting he's more well off. The presence of a railroad track down the middle of the farm suggests that this may be a decently high-trafficked area of Mexico. The body language of the three men suggests that they are proud of their work and labor. Here we have a postcard showing four men, one of which is in a suit, and the rest are wearing clothing similar to the two men in the photo of the banana and coffee farm. This tells us that perhaps the man in the suit is the owner of a farm or mine where these men work, showing the differences in classes. In this photo, we can see a very large team of Indian workers, who are usually at the lower end of the caste system, in the process of constructing a railroad, which you can see at the top right. Many of these railroads were implemented by the British government to move cargo and supplies easily, but as you can tell, all of the work was done primarily by the people of India. To the left of the railroad, there's a small village comprised of shacks and small homes. Often, the men who worked on the railroads would set up camp near it in order to maximize their work time. Here, we see a very rocky setting, which appears to be on the side of a cliff. At the top of the cliff, there's a large, luxurious home looking over the valley. As we take a closer look, we see two children in the center of the photograph, one sitting and leaning against a rock in the shade, and the other standing behind, with a large basket next to them. They both appear to be very skinny and wearing rags, indicating they are probably very poor. The basket suggests that they are taking a break from work. After getting knee-deep in what colonialism is really all about, we can examine and conclude that without colonialism a lot of us would not be in the places that we are. But with it came many atrocities and wrongdoings which can never be fully repented for.